I love American sitcoms. I love cheap side-on sets with plain lighting and nonsensical decoration. I love silly caricatures playing off of each other and everything getting resolved in the span of 24 minutes plus ads. I love canned laughter. I just love it. It always reminds me that I'm just one of many people watching this moment and laughing at it like I'm in a theatre watching a play. This video is going to be a little bit different and a little bit slower. But I have some downtime from working on Pixelsmith, and honestly, I felt like making my first, more truthfully, I want to talk about the first sitcom that was truly mine. The one that I would go out of my way to watch, late on school nights, with it airing reruns every weekday on Channel 28 from 2006 to 2008. And every time someone would walk into the living room and see me watching it, they'd groan. Ugh, this again? Why do you even like this? Today, we're talking about My Name is Earl. My Name is Earl is a show created by Greg Garcia. It's about a piece of white trash called Earl living in the American South. Earl, played by Jason Lee, is a bad guy. He drinks, he steals, he cheats. You couldn't list the bad things he's done. He spends his days hanging out with his dim-witted younger brother Randy, played by Ethan Suplee, his conniving abusive wife Joy, played by Jamie Presley, and his best friend Darnell, aka Crapman, played by Eddie Steeples. Everyone in the cast of My Name is Earl is a bad person. Earl's a bum, Randy's a thug, Darnell has this dark past, and Joy just does like a lot of things. They're definitely bad folks who have hurt a lot of people. Now, the reasonable among you may be asking, why on earth would anyone want to watch a show about a bunch of Yankee douchebags? I think I actually learnt that word from this show. Go figure. But you see, that's sort of the sitcom trope. I'm sure you've all read the endless hot takes that everyone on Friends or How I Met Your Mother or The Big Bang Theory is actually a terrible person, but the truth is this is very much the norm. It's an often misguided expression that misery is the essence of all comedy, but there's truth here that these ridiculous situations we see our characters in are funnier when their actions are exaggerated, usually in a negative way. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a sitcom that uses this and shows us the worst people imaginable living their lives, and it is endlessly entertaining, and I mean endlessly. The ancestor to all modern sitcoms, Seinfeld, loved the idea of painting its protagonists as villains to the point where they're actually put on trial for all the crimes they've committed. So, is My Name is Earl just another in a long line of shows where we see bad people do bad stuff for comedy? It's a tried and true method. Maybe this is just part of the course. Well, not exactly. Because in the first episode, Earl wins the lottery, gets immediately hit by a car, and in the hospital, Joy tells him he's been cheating on him with Darnell and divorces him. At this point, Earl realizes that not one good thing has ever happened in his whole life, and it just so happens that Carson Daly, stay with me here, is on the hospital TV talking about the concept of karma, a spiritual belief that actions in life have a cause and effect, and will influence events further on in your life or even your next one. To Earl this means, and this will be the first of many times I put on the accent, do bad things and bad things happen, do good things and good things happen. Now, to most people, including myself, coming across this moral philosophy will prompt you to try and do good things more often. And that's that. But no. You know how I said earlier that you couldn't list the bad things Earl's done? Well, he lists them, writing them down one by one on some yellow pages while in the hospital, and the whole show, like every single episode, is about a certain item on that list that needs to be made right. Earl figures out every bad thing he has done, tracks down every person he has hurt, and decides to make it right. And the best part is, his interpretation is right. It is an in-universe fact of this show that karma is a magical force that will make good things happen when you do a good thing, and bad things happen when you do a bad thing. The first thing Earl does is pick up trash to begin making amends for being a lifelong litterbug, and he finds the lottery ticket he lost, which gives him the financial power to allow the show to exist. If you think this premise sounds ridiculous, that's because it is, and so is this show. Its humor is completely silly, full of slapsticks, cutaway gags, and even a bit of gross out. Now, I'm not going to do a run-through of the whole show, but I will run through the first episode and talk about its general themes. If you are interested in the show, please go and watch it. I have no idea where you'll find it. It's not on Netflix or Prime in the UK, but I'm sure it's on Hulu or whatever. Now's a good time for a disclaimer though.
Mr. Tucker made us work 16 hours a day in a cramped, sweltering hot room for almost no money.
You mean like this?
Oh no, Mr. Tucker's son, he installed a fan.
You see that, Catalina? Because of you, this place isn't a sweatshop anymore. Just a place for people who work unreasonable hours for low pay.
Watch it for yourself and tell me in the comments what you think. So, the first episode sets up all the stuff I talked about so far. Oh, bad stuff happens, decides to be good and gets rewarded. His brother Randy honestly doesn't care whether they do good things or bad things, but Earl's looked after Randy, his whole life, so he just follows him whatever he wants to do. Along for the ride is the other person of colour on the main cast, their maid Catalina, played by Nadine Velasquez. I didn't mention her before in the main cast of Bad Guys because, well, her main thing is that she used to be a pole dancer, which I mean isn't morally wrong at all, especially if you're an undocumented immigrant trying to make a living. At this point she's quit pole dancing because one of her dances caused an old man to die of a heart attack. She vowed never to dance again, and the dance is like literally just jumping up and down to the song Jump Around by House of Pain. But, oh Jesus, I love this show, it's so stupid. So Earl, Randy, and Catalina go to solve a supposed big thing on Earl's list. Number 64, picked on Kenny James. Earl made Kenny's life hell in high school, and now he wants to help him out. After some questionable gags with Randy to find him, Earl stakes out Kenny's house and notices he's clearly very happy, but also very lonely. Now, Earl is still very new to this whole being good thing, so to helping someone, but an attempt nonetheless. But Kenny turns down the sex worker, and Earl finally confronts him face to face. At which point, Randy finds some dirty magazines. Some dirty magazines with men in them. Earl, I think you're trying to sell a cat to a man who's into dogs. So, Earl is a bad guy. He's done one good thing in his entire life, and that was to pick up some litter. He's from an unnamed southern red American state. This episode aired 8 years before gay marriage was legalized in the US, and only 2 years after the nationwide decriminalization of homosexuality by the Supreme Court. Now, look at how these two brothers react to finding out Kenny is gay.
I know this might sound crazy in this day and age, but we live in a small town, and I've never been face to face with a gay before. I understand now the running probably wasn't necessary.
Literally, to the point where it's just silly, kind of stripping down who homophobic people are at their core to show just how stupid the entire concept is. I mean, it's fantastic. And Earl is a homophobic character. A lot of people who look and sound exactly like him were in those days, and plenty still are. But he's the one being made fun of. His ridiculous reaction to an entirely normal concept is what's funny, and it's him getting over his own prejudice that keeps us watching. He tries to avoid doing this item on his list, claiming that there are special circumstances, but is immediately attacked by Joy because she's suddenly found out about the lottery winnings. There are no special circumstances. He has to get over himself and do the right thing. And the right thing is to help this hot twink find a man. Earl asks Kenny why he doesn't have a boyfriend, and he explains that he's not out and he's too scared to ever go to a gay bar. To a gay bar, gay bar, gay bar. Sorry, I can hear myself. Earl and Randy support Kenny by coming with him to a club so that he can finally work up the courage to talk to a guy. He does it, and Kenny lets Earl cross him off his list, commenting on the fact that the man he feared the most growing up just helped him overcome his greatest fear. The episode ends with Randy getting drunk and dancing with another man at the club, played by Greg Garcia, while Earl watches on and smiles. I don't think I need to explain why I love this first episode. As a kid who was still figuring himself out and would continue to be figuring himself out for at least the next 6 years, this idea that someone you're afraid of could actually grow and learn and accept you for who you are, just the very image of this clearly bad guy learning to accept and support a gay man on television was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. It's not perfect.
Don't they have special bars for the queers? I'm sorry. Homosexual Americans?
And it's rough around the edges. Kenny is, for all intents and purposes, a stereotype. It's a damn sight better than the queer representation seen in things like Friends or The Office, where queer people are often the butt of the joke. Here, it's the people in the wrong who are made fun of. The rest of the show is of a similar quality, constantly subverting your expectations and trying to find new opportunities for hope and optimism where you wouldn't expect it. Here's the opening monologue of every episode, and yes, I'm doing the accent again. You know the kind of guy who does nothing but bad things and then wonders why his life sucks? Well, that was me. Every time something good happened to me, something bad was always waiting around the corner. Karma. That's when I realized that I had to change. So, I made a list of every bad thing I've ever done, and one by one, I'm gonna make up for all my mistakes. I'm just trying to be a better person. My name is Earl. I'm just trying to be a better person. I watched this show not long after I had my first confession. I was born and raised Catholic, which ironically so was Greg Garcia. For those of you who don't know, Catholic confession is where you go to say your sins out loud in a place where only your priest and God can hear you. If you do this, then your priest will give you a penance, something to do to make it right, and God will forgive you. I've only done it once. Not because I'm a good person, I'm honestly not going to comment on a loaded issue such as that, but because I've always felt like it was a cop-out, that it was an easy way out of guilt and justifying your actions, to beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission. I look back now and I think it's more about learning to forgive yourself, but considering penances are usually, say, 7 Hail Marys or whatever, it's not ideal. Faith is something rarely touched on in sitcoms. Jerry Seinfeld is Jewish, but he rarely practices the faith. In Friends and How I Met Your Mother, the characters outright replace the word God with the universe in normal conversation, so the characters can still have debates that pertain to a monotheistic belief, but catering to more atheistic audiences. Which is by no means a bad thing, but it's not exactly a clever disguise. But here, in this show, Garcia's taken one part of Eastern faiths, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, and used it to explain why people even have faith to begin with, and how people use it to motivate themselves to become better people. Karma is just a literal deus ex machina, and yes, that is a kind of cultural appropriation, but it is specifically framed as Earl making his own interpretation of the Carson Daly show.
You're talking about karma.
You're a Carson Daly fan too, huh?
There are even moments in the show where people point out that his interpretation is wrong, where characters take different, equally valid interpretations, or when characters of other faiths, or no faith at all, show that they can still try and do good things. They just have different reasonings. One of my favourite episodes is when Earl meets a reverend he had wronged in the past, who turns out used to be a criminal himself, nicknamed Hash Brown. Throughout the episode, Earl finds out that the reverend is actually several items on Earl's list, and by some twisted turn of fate, Earl was responsible for every major bad event in the reverend's life, including his incarceration.
AK-47s, cop killer bullets, plastic explosives. Fine. Those are all legal in this state. But black market flu shots? I guess public safety means nothing to you.
Which led him to finding God. The Reverend isn't mad at him, because finding God is what put him on the path to righting his wrongs and making up for all the bad things he's done. Earl thinks that's karma, the Reverend thinks it's God, but it really could have just been coincidence, and none of these possibilities are ruled out. The show's core philosophy is that we all have lists, some longer than others, and we all have different ways of crossing things off of them, and different reasons for doing so. And the rest of the show is still just so good. A lot of the characters, especially Earl, appear very simple on the outside, but are incredibly deep. And yeah, the jokes are silly, but they can be so clever.
They're pretend, Randy. Just like Richie Rich and Donald Trump. They're just TV characters.
All Joy could remember about the kid's father is they drove a Ford. So we named him Dodge. Randy's crush on Catalina that ends in the honestly most strange and subversive ways imaginable. The show does a lot of fourth wall breaks, especially with the intro. A lot of Catalina's lines in Spanish are actually fourth wall breaks, like when she's pretending to swear but she's actually thanking the Latino audience for tuning in every week. Oh, and this face that Jason Lee makes all the time when he raises his eyebrows, frowns, and nods, and he's like, yeah, cool, I accept that. I still do this expression to this day. My Name is Earl never got more than 4 seasons, and ended on a cliffhanger. Apparently to continue the show wouldn't have been possible without compromising its artistic integrity. But Greg Garcia has publicly spoken about his planned ending for the show, and it is a doozy. I highly recommend you read up on it after watching through the show, because it will warm your heart. I've never watched his next show, Raising Hope, but I've heard good things, and that they occasionally nod to Earl's story in it. I don't think My Name is Earl is going to be like my favourite sitcom Community, where it was quite popular when it was released, but moved time slots too frequently and ultimately faded out of popularity until word of mouth and the rise of streaming services gave it a huge surge in popularity to the point where even MatPat wants to milk it for views. No, My Name is Earl was fairly popular on release, even over here in the UK, will likely fade into obscurity. I know a few people that watched it growing up, but none that still watch it today. But that's okay. It will always be my first. A show that taught me to try and rise above your prejudices, to turn the other cheek and help people when they needed it. It taught me what it meant to try and put good in the world, and that if I've hurt you or wronged you in some way, you can add that to my list. I'm just trying to be a better person.